Want to nail engineering manager interviews at Mang and other top-tier companies? You can with USA's #1 tech interview prep platform. We have 300 plus SMEs and instructors from top-tier tech companies to help you land your dream job. We've helped thousands of engineers make their way into Mang. You could be next. To learn more, register for our free webinar.
Let's get started. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
All right. So object modeling. Have you already taught that interview, or are you still pending to have that?
Sorry, what?
You said, I saw your notes saying you are going to have some kind of gaming kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So one of my interviews, they actually gave me some starter code of a game of tic-tac-toe.
Tic-tac-toe, okay.
Yeah, and they're like, you probably have to think of a game and how you'll do object modeling on a game, and eventually scale it for internet scale.
So this is actually a mix of like object OD and system design.
Yeah, and I think even little bit of API design too, because they said they can also talk in respect to API design of that game.
Okay.
Basically, API scalability and object model of a game.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question, I would say. They can always measure your to what extent you can do with the software design. As smart, even just coding. How do you have your classes working with each other, or maybe a database schema. You can then go to the system. How do you scale system? How do you handle fail and everything? All right, let's probably do something similar. But again, object modeling doesn't really get interviewed very often. So I have mainly asked one question. If you I don't know. I assume you have a smartphone, probably either Apple or Google. Actually, so let's design not a system, but model this objects for us to. Basically, it's a marketplace, right? There are three roles. One is developer, right? How would a developer be able to publish an application on a Play Store or in App Store? Two is the second role is, of course, as a user. How would I be able to discover and download or even purchase an app? Really, the third role is the Play Store or the App Store itself. They are basically they are they are the marketplace, right? They are coordinating this kind of transactions. So we need to develop something from that. Actually, the third role here, right? How do we enable the developers to publish their apps to the store? And as a user, how do we enable users to find and discover the apps?
And the apps itself, basically a repository.
To give you some background, because if you never did anything to it, you probably don't know much. So first of all, an app itself, either Apple or Google, it's basically a binary file, right? Just as if it's Mac, it's a DMG. On Apple, it's IPA. On Android, it's APK. Whatever, it's just a single file.
Yeah.
As a developer, I somehow use some coding tool, develop some kind of a binary file. Then I need to apparently upload to the App Store. Let's assume Apple, so we don't have to repeat. App Store to Apple. Then apparently, I would need to specify a lot of things. I need to give a name. I specify contact for myself, right? I need to have developer information. I also need additional information like screenshots, right? Maybe I would also want to add a movie for my app. Maybe it's a game, right? All the things related to the apps. We would have let's talk about this for now. Then on the other hand, as a user, when you see an app, you will see all this information, as well as there will be information like reviews, right, and downloads. How many times this app has been downloaded? It's a review, yeah. So there's a score, right? Maybe 5 stars, 3 stars, or maybe 3.5 stars, 3.6. There will be also reviews itself. Stars is just a rating, actually, right? There will be reviews like I write something. This app is great. I really like it. My son really like it. Whatever. Apparently, for any app, there will be many reviews, right? There will be also
binary itself. The app binary, that would be
binary itself would be somewhere anyway, right? Because users eventually need to download it, and developers need to upload it somewhere, and as your system, you need to store it somehow, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, there are another 2 things. I'll probably leave it for now. We will go there when we have time. One is the versions. Like as a developer, I want to update my app. Right? Yeah. How do we handle that? The second is actually a paid model. How do we handle payments? Because payments, we don't really going to go to details of payments. How do you collect money from user? But like, how do I set a price model for different countries? Right? There are so many countries in the world. Some United States use US dollars. When UK use pounds. Pound. Like how do you handle that thing? But let's worry about that later. Let's just get the very basics working first. Like. Okay. What kind of how do you design your system? Mostly from objects, the perspective for now. If we have, we can talk about how do we scale it. But let's just focus on how do we create an object model for our business.
So let me first. See what are the actors in this model.
Yeah.
Developer would be one.
Yeah.
And the app itself would be the second actor, and users would be the third actor that we have.
Okay. When you say app, it means App Store, right?
The App Store, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean the binary. I don't think the binary would be a actor.
I would say that app would be an object.
Sure.
That would be an interface basically, and there can be different type of apps which would implement those interface.
Okay.
So I'll just chart out the use cases that we have discussed for each of the actors, and then we can discuss more about the interactions that they have. So this is a developer. A developer can submit an app, update the app information.
Okay.
In meta information. What else? Let me just take a look at what we discussed. A developer can publish apps on the App Store, can submit an app, and can also update the information about the app. Submitting an app can be of 2 types, like you said. There's one time when you actually submit it for the first time, and the second time would be when you update an app. Basically, you update the version to a next
Okay.
stable version. That would be one use case. I'll add it as a use case, and then we'll see where we need a separate one for this. Um, no, it's basically update the app versions,
Okay.
and the developer can also um, retrieve app details from the app store, like
Sure. Basically, you would have kind of a CRUD API for those, right?
yeah, yeah. So basically, CRUD operations on the app.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the next act, can I just draw it on here so that we can see both of these together? So the next would be the user.
Okay.
The user can download an app.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the system is the same actually. Like the square is the system. It's just that I don't have enough
Sure.
space, so I'm drawing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can search for apps.
Okay.
Um, um, so one workflow is I open the app store. I search for the app. I can check the app information
Mm-hmm.
and check app information, and I can download the app.
Okay.
I can actually leave a review.
Yes.
Leave a review
And
/ rating.
Yeah.
Yeah. The third actor is the App Store is basically the system that handles all these operations. Um, the one entity would also be the app itself. Um, so, um, but we don't need to have a use case for it. So this is basically the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, App Store would be App Store is not this. Um, so there are two ways we can consider an app store to be. One way would be a system that's the app store which handles all these operations, and then the other one is basically just an object that holds all the apps and its information. Um,
Okay.
uh, that would be a collection of apps basically. Uh, let's use it as collection of apps. Based on this model, App Store is the one that handles all these operations.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yep. Now coming to the interactions of the objects. The first object that we have would be an interface user. User would be an interface because there can be different types of users, and uh, we want to make sure that we provide extensibility so that um, a developer can also be a user of the app store. So we want to make sure that we have those as separate. Um, the user would have username, user ID. That's the um, username, user ID, and what else do we need the user to do? Can see the reviews and discover and download apps. Okay. Uh, do we need to have the user also have a method which stores the app this user has downloaded?
Would you store it with user together, or well, we should probably be more explicit. Are we designing something for in-memory data structure or API layer, or are we designing something for the storage layer?
For the user data, the user data interface.
Well,
So,
when you are speaking it's an interface, I assume it's probably something like a in-memory object model, right?
correct. So
Yeah.
how I I was thinking about it is that you have this in memory.
Okay.
So whenever you have this object implemented, all the data that you get from the user would be modeled as an object, and that's what you use as your
Right.
DB schema to.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Sure. So the question you are asking is where do we? But you are asking a question that's kind of hard to answer. Is do we store the apps together with this user? Well, right.
Uh, no, no, no.
So are you saying we should have a list of apps as a member of this class?
No. So I was saying, okay, for the apps would also be an interface because you can have multiple types of app. Um,
Okay.
the members would be an app ID, just to make sure it's unique. App details, um, app uh,
When you say details, what is it?
um,
What's the data type?
app detail, app information, basically. The information can be the app name, who's the publisher, what is the reviews. That
Uh,
would also be an object. App
sure.
information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you will draw that object later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, app ID would be a string.
That's
Uh,
fine.
app information. Um, the app binary.
Okay.
Um, the
What is it? What would be the data type for this?
that's what. So this one shouldn't be a binary. It should be the app. Uh, the app location or the app URL, basically. So if you store the binaries in, say, object blobs like S3, then this would be location to where you have to hit that URL to get the app itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So the app URL, basically. Um, this would be the app interface. This would be an interface. The user is also an interface. Um, developer is developer profile is a different interface that we would use. Um, developer interface would have a
Well,
publisher ID.
so if you are saying they are interfaces, why would they have members?
Oh, um,
I mean, why would they have member variables? Right? You definitely can have member methods.
methods. Yeah. Okay, so the class which would implement them should hold the members of the
Okay.
interface. Correct. Um, so um, let me see. Can interface have static methods, static variables?
You probably don't want a static username for
Yeah, that's
users.
yeah. Correct. So this should only have the methods that each of
Right.
these
If-
entities perform.
I mean, if you really want to specify them as interface, then they would have methods like get username, get user ID, right? Things like that. Then your implementation will be implementing those methods and provide a concrete implementation.
Get name, get ID. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we still need to provide the parameter here. Oh no, actually no. We don't need this. Um, so the developer has what are the methods we want the developer to implement basically. Um, get developer information. But these getters and setters can be added in the class as well. So we technically might not need it in the interface also. Interface should have something that each of these users should implement. Getters and setters are just variables that you can have the class that implements this interface have it anyways.
Let's assume let's start with user, okay? You have a user interface. How are you supposed to use it? How do you create a user? Let's say we implement a flow that allow user to register themselves, right? They input an email, maybe a password, right? They click a button, say, create my account.
Yeah.
Now, this request is sent to a backend. Now, how would you implement any code to make use of this user and save it to a database?
I would have a user class that would store the information you get from the registration form into various fields in that object, and after checking that that's correct, store it into the DB.
Wait, so do you make use of this class you are designing right now?
No, not really.
So what's the purpose of this class?
This shouldn't be an interface. I think this should be just a user class. I was considering it to be an interface because I thought there can be multiple types of users, and you should have a common interface that binds all of them and still has its own functionality, but all the features that we need. So in this case, extensibility makes more sense rather than interface, basically. Yeah. So user is a class.
Okay.
User class has, it would have username, user ID,
Okay.
and user account password.
Sure.
This would be encrypted.
Yeah.
And it would have the getters and setters for this.
Sure.
Getters and setters for all these all the fields.
Okay.
And what can the user do? A user can also have the user data would be just these things. It also we also need to store a list of apps for this particular user, and the app is basically the app ID.
You really store a list of apps.
List of apps for that the one that this user has downloaded as a history.
As history.
Meaning, if you have downloaded 5 apps on your system,
this will be quite complicated. I can download an app and then delete that on my device. I might have multiple devices. I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, right?
Yeah, keeping a track of.
So maybe if you really want this, I think we should say these are the list of apps that you acquired. I won't say purchased because a lot of them are free, right? So we say acquired. But even for that, do you want to store it with this class? Why would you need to store it with this class?
Actually, that we can actually store that with.
My point is, like, as user may get hundreds or even thousands of apps, so what would be the app's size, right? What would be the size of the app's object?
Not the apps itself, just the app ID. List of app IDs.
Okay, that probably makes more sense, right? If you just
not the wastage of space. Just the app IDs to know that I downloaded these apps.
Okay.
List of app IDs.
You mean strings?
Yeah, collection of strings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What does now we need So this is app ID, app info, and the URL. But again, apps should be a class because if we are
Oh,
storing all, yeah.
yep. Okay, that's fine. Um,
For the developer class, we have um, developer info,
what is in developer
uh,
info?
the publisher name. It could be a company, it could be a username.
Okay.
Um, so developer info is is just like app info. It'll be a new class that I'll develop now.
Okay.
Yeah. You have developer ID, and also the list of apps that they have published. App IDs published. And then you also have getters and setters.
List of app ID published. Okay.
Um, as a profile, just a list of these are the ones that you've published.
Okay.
A developer info would be things like developer's name. We also can have developer the license if it's a company.
Yeah, sure. Let's yeah, make it simple. Let's say we have phone number and email, support email.
Okay.
Something like that. It's okay.
Phone number and email. Okay.
Yeah, that's enough.
Okay. And all of these would be strings.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. App info has app info would have app downloads.
What is it?
How many times this app has been downloaded?
Okay, it's a number. Okay.
Oh, that way, yeah. Let me try. This is app info, and this is part of. It would have the app downloads,
Downloads. Yeah.
um, app rating. App rating would be a number.
Okay.
This would be app downloads would be a long too.
Okay.
Apart from that, it can have a list of comments on the app.
What is the comments?
There are people who leave comments in the reviews, right, and not just the number.
Yeah. What's that type of comments?
It's a list of collection of strings.
Mm.
Oh, okay, I see. A collection of strings.
How would that work? So if you remember, when you look at the comments on anyone's, I don't know if you have a phone right now, but if I open my app store,
Mhm.
the reviews, it's not only it's not only having only a string, it has three things, right? One is a string, which is whatever text they entered. Two is how many stars they are giving for this particular review, which is their rating. The third one is their name, right? Who made this
Oh.
review?
So the comment itself should be a class which holds all these three information.
Okay.
Yeah, and app rating is basically the number that you get the averaged out of
Okay.
people who have actually rated it. Just
Okay.
so we have a comments class. We have the comment itself, which would be a string. The rating, that would be a number, and then the user ID.
Okay.
User ID or username. Username ID to be unique. User ID would be unique, so you have that. And then while displaying, you can always use the entire user ID to get more information.
Okay.
Should I move on to the App Store, the main class?
Let me have a quick look. So each app would have ID and a bunch of information. Where are my thumbnails, pictures, videos, and those information?
For the app?
Yeah, I might have 5 pictures, screenshots for my app, right? Remember on the page.
Yeah.
The developers update them. I would have also have a description like, this app is for join doodles, whatever.
Okay, those information. Okay.
Right.
Um, so you have app ID, you have app information, which is the more peripheral information. Then you have comments, and you would also need to store. Um, so these are apart from the binary, right? These are
Yeah, of course. They're not part of the binary.
they're not part of the binary. Um,
The binary is just something executable on a disk.
Yeah.
So nothing.
So no, I was saying that maybe we can. One way would be that we can store all these information, like the thumbnails and the images and screenshots, in the blob S3 blob itself.
It's not designed that way. Yeah, unfortunately, I wish they could. I think that there's only the app icon is in the binary, is in the blob. Everything else is entered by the developer.
Okay. Is provided by the developer. Where can we more like it should be a class, but it should be an this the additional information that you have for the app should be a class. But what I'm trying to think is these things can be very different. Like you might enter 3 different things for the app. I might have 5 screenshots.
Right.
It's not standardized.
No.
But
well, they have a requirement, but it's up to developer, like how many pictures they want to upload. Do they want to upload a video? It's up to them.
But are there any fixed requirements like you have to upload 1 picture?
Well, you have to upload at least 1 picture. Maybe I think some of them are required, at least 3 of them.
Okay. So app maybe like an app starter details,
Okay.
app main page or something. App main page. So you said it needs to have 1 picture. So hmm. So when you provide the picture, you don't do you provide the location of the picture, or you actually provide the PA like a JPEG image that we need to store?
You means the App Store.
The App Store.
The App Store, it's been displayed on the details page of an app, right? When you open an App Store, then on the details page there will be a list of a few pictures of the app, just screenshot of them, to give a user an idea like what you can, how would you be able to use this app?
Yeah.
It's just a JPEG served by the App Store somehow, right?
Okay. So if it's a picture, then you say main image, and it's a JPEG or a picture, and so that's something that you definitely need to store. Apart from that, are there screen?
When you say store, do you want to store it in database or you want to store it somewhere else?
Images. the way I see anything that's not text related, I usually think in terms of storing it in a object blob. Um,
Sure.
that you don't have to worry about the formats and if the database supports it and everything. Um, so yeah, if it would have been me, I would have thought along with the app binary, you whenever you create an app, it's like an object that's created which stores the logo, the main image, um, and then as well as the binary on.
Yes, that's a correct assumption. I think we definitely should do that. When we store them, we should store them together for an app.
Yeah, so this app main page would also be a component of the app class. Um,
Okay.
you want to store them as you still want um, the actually this app main page consists of main image and then in the format would be a string URL to the location where it's being stored on S3 bucket or any object blob store, um, and that's what is the main part of um,
Okay.
the class. Um, developer info is also part of this class. Um,
Developer info is part of developer class. Okay.
yeah. Develop- and user. So
All
we'll
right.
keep these two separate, the user as well as the developer. Um,
Okay. Um,
they're two different actors. It's like system admin versus user. A system admin can still be a user, but you want them to be separate entities.
okay. You were talking about
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. What are you going to talk about next? You were trying to talk about the App Store
App
itself.
Store, the main controller, App Store itself.
Oh, okay. What will be there for?
What would be
What
there?
will be in this App Store itself?
App Store would be mostly using would it's basically all the use cases that we talked about is
Okay.
what this App Store controller would implement as functions.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, maybe give me a few examples.
first one would be creating a user account.
Okay.
Actually, no. Um, so creating an account, yes. So this is the main controller basically.
Sure.
I'll write few things it is supposed to do, and then we can see if we can take some of them out of the controller.
Taking out, you mean create a separate sub controller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we just want to make sure that things related to the apps are. So one would be creating user account. Let me go back to the requirements. For the user, it's downloading an app, searching for an app, check app info, leave review and rating. Okay. So creating a user and so yeah, like I said, creating a user can be done outside of the controller. It has nothing to do with the app store itself. So things like search app store with a particular app ID. You can search for a particular app when you try to type the name
Okay.
for the app. And you can also, when you've searched, you can download app.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably stop you from here. I want to talk about something else. I kind of get where you're going. Basically, you have a set of APIs that just do everything we described at the beginning, right? You will be able to view an app. For a developer, you will be able to upload an app, upload pictures, you publishing app, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
I get that. So can you go back to the previous screen? I want to add a little bit complexity into this. how do we have different versions of an app?
Different versions of the app. Okay. Um,
As a developer, I can upload multiple versions of an app, right? When you
Correct.
upload a new version,
How do we?
yeah, what would change?
Um, so when I think of it from an API perspective, if I want to publish an app, there would be a latest tag or it can be a version tag. So we tag the binary basically.
Yeah.
So whenever you publish, you have like a tag, which is a string. Um, and if you, for example, if you want to, so this tag basically say in an API, if you want to just, if you hit the API of just downloading that app, you get the latest tag back, like the latest binary. But if you hit the API with, say, app slash tag ID is the version like 1.2.4, then it actually uses the binary which is kept in the blob store with that tag and downloads that particular binary.
Okay.
So the binaries that we store would be tagged, and there would be a latest tag which would point to the latest binary. So if you don't submit anything explicitly, you get the latest back. And if you add a particular version, then it hits that it uses that version to
How is that represented in this class?
yeah.
Class.
So in the app, um, there should be so we need to add version information
Okay.
separately.
Okay.
That will still be part of the app, but you want to separate it out.
Okay.
Version info. Um, um, what would this version info have? It would have m- so basically we need to find out a way to store where the latest what version maps to the latest tag, which is the latest version, and how do we um, tag the each of the URL with the version?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Like if you think about a developer's use case, when I update, publish a new app, what happens, right? Which object do I create? Which object do I update? So that the system knows that, hey, this app is actually updated.
So the system, so when the developer tries to update a particular app ID, it knows that you have to work with this object of this app class. What it does is after it would give when you're trying to update, it would give a new app URL and which would update this field, append basically. So app URL should not just be a single URL. It should be a list of URLs where
If it's a list of URLs, how do you know for which version, which URL should I go to?
so basically that instead of a no actually it should be like a key value pair, because the key being the version number and the URL being the path for that particular version, and
Okay.
then you have an explicit tag, the latest tag, which points to what key is the latest one.
Okay.
Um, so that would be one way of approaching this one. Um, that's that's basically, so yeah, we do store versions of one of those files at our place, and that's the kind of similar technique that we use, that we store the versioned the files as versioned names and then use a key value to check um, what exactly is the latest version, or if you have hit a particular version to download it, then it checks the URL for that key and then fetches that particular file.
What about comments? So for any user, when I make a rating or a review comments for the app, right, I'm actually holding a particular version of that app. I may give a low rating for an old version, but the developer might have updated their app, right? So so generally, the review comments should be also versioned, right? A comment will be only applicable for each version, right?
Are they like because as far as I remember, so, so some of the apps they still have people complaining about these things were not implemented and the developers saying that we have already updated the app and
Mhm.
download the latest version. So
Mhm.
it does show the older comments instead of only on the
Right, right. It's possible, but generally it will be unfair. So no matter what, we should know. I don't know what Apple does. They will show another little note there saying, "Hey, this comment is actually made against a previous version of this app."
oh okay yeah. So you also want to refresh the ratings based on the new app, or does that?
For every review made by the user, it should be associated with a version, right? Because the user, when they are making the comment on their device, they should have only probably one version.
One version, yeah. And does it? And what about app rating?
It will
In
be
that,
same thing. So if you publish a new app, your rating should be somehow recalculated. But that's a complex algorithm. We probably won't cover it.
yeah.
But they probably take a little bit of your history and a little bit of your latest reviews, because when you first publishing app, there will be no review, no
Review,
rating for
yeah.
review,
Yeah.
right? They probably have some algorithm.
Mhm.
The newer ratings would probably have a higher weight, while the older ones might have a. Well, we don't care. There will be
Okay.
some algorithm,
There's
but
something that takes care of
yeah,
it. But for the comments, we have to make sure that it's related to that particular version.
it will be same for any rating or comments made by user. They should be associated with a particular version.
Okay. Um, so basically, in that case, each version has its own state that we
State.
need to store. Like
What do you
a
mean?
state of how many were the downloads, how many were the comments, um, and that particular state is what we update
Okay.
every time a comment comes in. Or um, no, I'm just actually trying to understand the use case. I'm not proposing a solution here.
Mhm.
Uh,
Uh, uh, the requirement is any comment will be associated with the version. That's the requirement, right?
so comments should be. Um, so basically, in that case, the app info is not a generic app info. Uh, it's associated with each version of the app.
So you're saying the app info would be having
Eh,
it's not a one-to-one mapping to the apps now, right? What be a
Yeah,
one-to-many,
yeah.
like
It'll be more like one to many mapping, and um, so basically, the app should have um, app ID, which would be common because it's the same app that you're updating each time. But it also stores, in that case, it also stores um, another, basically an object that has these three information. This entire blob should be a new object because even the main page can change. For the next app, you can provide a different logo or a different image. A new version can have a different logo, for example.
hmm.
Then you want to,
That actually doesn't really happen a lot. Most people want to keep them unchanged, just to be uniform for all the versions. First of all, for App Store, you really cannot download an old version. You can always download the latest version,
version.
unless you have a problem with a device or have a bug or something. But otherwise, you only see the latest version and latest metadata. So we probably won't group this app's main page, this, all the pictures and stuff. That's only one copy, of course.
That's only one copy. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's we don't really change that. We only
But the app information and the app URL can be it can be a new object, and
Mhm.
whenever you update it, the entire thing needs to be updated.
Okay. All right. I think we are running out of time. Let's spend another 5 minutes to talk about my overall feeling and a few things that. First of all, I think this is maybe not the object model you might see in your object modeling. I think most of the real, I think those people, when they do the object modeling, I probably should rephrase my object modeling a little bit. But they will probably give you down to class level, give you real code, like here's a class of airfare. How do you calculate that thing? Which is probably somewhat easier than what I'm doing here, since this one requires you to understand this business model and really understand the relationship of these objects. So mine is actually a little bit harder. Then the overall feeling about this design, what should I say? There are a few good things, and there are a few things I think we should improve. For example, you talked about like developers is actually a user. That's very correct. That's a very good abstraction. Like a developer should somehow extend from a user, right? Because they all have like usernames, password, user ID. They are all same, except that developers have additional attributes. Like they will be able to have developer information, like which company they are from, their support email, support phone number, those kind of things. You are doing a few things very correct. Like I think the overall abstraction of these objects are roughly good. Like we have apps, we have users. Can you go back to the previous page?
Yeah.
Page 3. I think this is the most important page. The comments is also generally correct. And the things you also make a good choice of, like you put the binaries not in memory but put in a blob somewhere, right? And provide a URL to them. Now the things I'm not really fully satisfied. One is like, I think you are trying to design object-oriented structure, so you try to put the interfaces. Not necessarily every time we have to interface. Interface should be because whenever you have an interface, then you would have to have a way to use them, right? How do you create an interface? You probably need a factory, right? That's fine if you can, make a set of classes work together, providing a factory and provide interface as well as 2 implementations. That's fine, but sometimes it's not necessarily required. It makes things more complicated. And I'm glad that you say, oh, this will be just class. And most time it will be fine. We don't really use interfaces that often unless you have a lot of polymorphism. Like, let's say if you down to language level, say, I want this thing to be able to handle whether it's integer, whether it's string, whether it's any object class, I want to do something, then you need an interface, right? There are a lot of polymorphism there. But if we only have this kind of object model, it's okay to just have a class. In reality, a lot of times we do this is actually just, it will probably just be a POJO so that it will be able to be persisted to a database easily, right? You have some Hibernate annotations on top of them and done. Also, I think sometimes I feel you are having a little bit extra classes, which is a little bit like unnecessary, like app info. Because you put this thing inside the app itself using the very initial version, or the developer info can be just part of developer. Of course, later we know when you have version, then you cannot put this app info in the app. Instead, we should put this app info together with the comments in the version info, right?
Yeah.
And we should not have as well as the app URL. We should not have then we can have we don't really need a map. It will be just a list of versions as part of an app.
List of versions. So basically, we don't need to go back to the previous version. So there's no point storing them.
We will probably still need to store all the versions just for whatever reasons. Like there will be still user beyond the older versions, and they still need some information about them. And for auto update, we need to figure out a few things. We need to store them, so we need to have a list of versions. But each version would have a different app ratings, right? They would have different comments and their
URL.
there are different URLs.
Number of downloads.
So that will be an object, which is a version, right? Or you can or you can call it version info. And then the app would have a list of versions.
App would have a list of version info, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe we can optimize later, like we can only keep a latest version. Okay. Yeah. Then we have a method saying, give me a history. A lot of times I would argue like from an object modeling perspective, it's probably okay, but when you really look at the memory footprint, then we won't probably put the whole list of things into the memory, like list of comments. It's just not possible. So a lot of apps would
not necessary also.
10,000s of comments. Right? That probably should be some, there will be some relationship, but it should be done by methods, right? Get comments for get comments method, and with 2 parameters starting from like offset and the page size, which is paginated. That should be considered as well.
So basically, anything that we need in memory to manipulate, that's what we'll use as variables. Otherwise, we have methods to retrieve them however.
Right. On the fly, yeah. Most time they'll be fine. Like especially like comments, right? You have a lot of popular apps would have a lot of comments, and it's impractical to put all the comments into memory. It just like no one will be looking at all the meta ones, right? Yeah. So it should be paginated.
But do we still need them to be in memory, or we can just have a method which calls it directly from the database?
I think it should be a method and together with a cache.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't make sense to put everything in memory for all the time. No one will read your comments that made of, 2 years ago. It's there just for our calculation for a rating probably, but it's very unlikely someone will go and look it. If someone really want to look at, sure, well, we'll load it from database for you. Otherwise, the newer versions will be in the cache. That's roughly generally how we do it.
Got it. And also the app controller. So what I don't necessarily understand of object modeling interviews is that how much do we have to focus on getting the main controller part, or it's more about how you model the interactions between the main actors?
There is no standard answer to this. You have to, one most important thing is you have to communicate with your interviewer. You talk to them saying, what do you want? Right? Yeah. Do you want me to spend more time on these object relationships, or you want time to spend on like, do you need this overall high-level methods or controllers of those things? I think most people don't really want those controllers because they are not interesting. It's just a bunch of methods. Why would I care?
Yeah.
Right. The more to see is like, how do I insert a version in this whole structure and put the version there so it works properly? That's a more difficult problem.
Yes.
That's, at least for me, I would be focusing on more on this page instead of the next page.
Next page, got it.
But just keep talking to your interviewer and make sure you are answering what they are looking for. Generally, they would have some kind of agenda for their interviews. I'm okay with this page, but I do see I had maybe one object or modeling interview from some other company. They asked me to do the airfare calculation, basically, the airplane tickets. So they have a few factors in there, like what's the distance you are flying, what's the airplane, what's the airline, whether it's been Northwest or United or whatever. There will be the premiumness of the seats. There are a few things like you definitely need some. There are a little bit of algorithm as well, like depends on whether you are a frequent flyer or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you would have a method to calculate a price for all these kind of things. And now your task is actually, how do you define a few classes so that it's actually more extensible, right? It's more, let's say I add a new airline, how easy that would be. I add a, because also at the same time, different airline might have different policies. Some, let's say, United may be charging, $100 for whatever, the premium seats, whatever, first class. Then how do we reflect this? How do we use some kind of polymorphism for that? That's very down to earth, like class level
Changes.
designs, right? That's quite different from what I'm doing here, but I think that should be also called object modeling or object-oriented design. That really demonstrates your ability to create a flexible design. It's much simpler. It doesn't really have a database storage. It's just a few classes work together, right? How do you model it?
Yeah.
I actually like that problem.
The airline one?
Huh?
The airline one?
Yeah, it's a small class, but I know it's not easy to get it very 100% right.
I'll definitely look at that one. Also, one question. So, when you think of object modeling, do you think in terms of the design patterns, or do you just go by fundamentals of inheritance, polymorphism, and composition?
One advice what I would have is don't over design. So you can keep those in mind, but I don't think people would ask directly on those design patterns because rarely it's more like have an object-oriented design that works, right, with extensibility and something that just works. It doesn't have to be overly designed and say, oh, I have to have an interface. I have to have a factory to create these interfaces and have a lot of polymorphism for all of them. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Definitely have some design in the mind. Like, I'm not saying you definitely not need a factory. In fact, sometimes you do need a factory or some kind of singleton or whatever. It might be needed, but don't over-design your stuff at the same time, because when you over-design, you are complicating your system and you are wasting your time. Also a problem. So whenever an interview becomes into object modeling or system design, it becomes subjective. You have to make a judgment call on how your solution would be ideal to be matching what the interviewer is looking for. So communicate with them and ask them the right questions, like what exactly you want. Sometimes they will also give you hints, and you should be able to take their hints to steer your own interview to the right direction.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking out time. This was very helpful.
Yeah, I wish that would be somewhat useful.
Yeah.
It's not. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.